Join me today as I dive back into classic fantasy of the 1990s. I'm giving you the two best books of each year of the 90s that didn't get nominated for any awards. At least not the big boys. And it's a crime. These are some great books. Come find out which ones make the list. Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, horror, and other nerdy things we enjoy. I'm Jim, the father of this channel. Thanks for being with me today as we talk about some really great books. I think you're going to find some that you've heard of before and probably loved, and others that are new gems for you to discover and check out. If you enjoy this, be sure to give us a like, and we hope you'll subscribe to the channel. Take a look at all the things Zach and I have on here. Lots of goodness of all types of content. So stick around, hit that subscribe. The 1990s, there were a ton of great fantasy books that came out this year, and a ton of awards and nominations that went out to them. And yet, perhaps there were just too many good books because some of the best books got totally ignored, completely snubbed by the award committees. These books that I'm going to share with you here were very popular books, sold tons of copies, have great reviews, tons of ratings on Goodreads and Amazon. They're not hidden gems. They're just fantastic books that somehow the Hugo, the Locus, the World Fantasy Award, they just missed these guys. Might have been because they were the first of a series and no one knew how good it was going to get. Maybe it was a debut book by an author and he just wasn't on anyone's radar yet. Whatever the reason, these were very deserving books, but they got snubbed. You get to check them out here today, and I hope you are entertained. Let's dive right in and hit these books. Again, I'm going to give you the best and the second best book of the year to not get any award nominations. For 1990, we do that backwards. The runner-up of the year is Homeland, Book 1 of the Dark Elf trilogy by R.A. Salvatore. This is epic dark fantasy and it's Dungeons and Dragons-based lore. There are many more than 3 books featuring this dark elf, the character Drizzt, but this is the first book and the first trilogy that features and focuses on this unique character. It's not the first appearance of Drizzt, but this is where the spotlight is here and the stage is all for him. This series has gone on to be embedded in fantasy culture. There's a whole bunch of Drizzt books out there now. This one, though, we learn about Drizzt, this dark elf born into a cruel society who rejects the sins of his heritage and flees onto the surface world, forging his own path as a moral warrior. Great character, great book. A shame it wasn't noticed. But the best book of the year in 1990 to get no award nominations is Stone of Farewell by Tad Williams. This epic fantasy novel is the second of the 3-book Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy. This was a New York Times bestseller and a fan favorite in epic fantasy circles. It's praised as panoramic, vigorous, often moving. I can vouch for all those things. I just read it this past year. Continuing the sweeping saga in Austenard, the protagonists here grapple with political intrigue, ancient evils, and a looming threat of war. Moving on to 1991, the runner-up of the year is Blue Moon Rising by Simon R. Green. This is epic adventure fantasy with humor baked in. I've read some of Simon Green's books, not this one, but I do know he loves to have that humor incorporated, and it was right here back in this debut fantasy novel by the author. This is book 1 of his Forest Kingdom quartet, and is beloved for its fast pace, wit, and memorable characters. A young healer discovers his latent power and joins a band of heroes, battling grime, goblins, and a growing darkness threatening their realm. But the best book of 1991 goes to The Verdant Passage by Troy Denning. Epic sword and sorcery fantasy, this is another Dungeons and Dragons linked novel, and is book 1 of the Prism Pentad, which means there's 5 books. Popular launch of the Dark Sun campaign novel series. This maintains strong engagement among D&D fans. A ragtag group of survivors on the desert world of Athos embark on a perilous mission to stop the tyrannical sorcerer king Kalek from turning himself into a destructive dragon. That would be bad. For 1992, the runner-up is The Thief of Always by a surprising author, Clive Barker. This is dark fantasy and an allegorical story. It's a standalone novel. Why is it surprising, Clive Barker? Well, if you know him, you know why it's surprising. If you've never heard of him, Google him. You'll understand quickly. But this is now a cult favorite with a strong following amongst Barker's fans. It's praised for its imaginative storytelling and fairy tale vibe. A bored boy is lured into a magical house promising eternal delights, but soon learns that every wish comes with a chilling price. Okay, that actually does sound a little like Clive Barker. But the best book of 1992 to get no award nominations is Lords and Ladies by Terry Pratchett. This is a fantasy novel of the Discworld series, number 14 in publication order, regularly featured in Best Fantasy of 1992 lists. The Witches of Lancer face an invasion of malicious elves empowered by ancient magic, forcing them to protect their land and each other in a battle of wits and wills. For 1993, our runner-up of the year is Demons Don't Dream by Piers Anthony. This is a fantasy novel. It's that comic whimsical Xanth series where there's over 40 books. This is book 16 of the long-running saga. It's a popular entry in the Xanth series, appreciated for its particular pun-based humor and playful interaction between game and story. Two teenagers enter Xanth via a magical computer game and must win a prize through punning challenges or remain trapped in its zany landscape forever. But number one for 1993 is Men at Arms, again by Terry Pratchett. Discworld just wasn't getting any official love from the people handing out those trophies. This is book 15 in Discworld and is the second of the City Watch subseries, which is one of those subseries raving fans of Discworld tell me I should be trying. This is the stuff. This book is regularly featured in 1990s fantasy best of lists. The City Watch investigates a mysterious firearm circulating in Ankh-Morpork, unspooling corruption and surprising political shifts in classic Pratchett wit. For 1994, our runner-up is the start of an epic fantasy series, Wizard's First Rule by Terry Goodkind. This epic fantasy is quest-driven and is very adult in nature. Don't hand this to your preteen. This is book one of the Sword of Truth series, an 11-book arc. Now, there's many more books in the Sword of Truth overall universe, but the core series ends at book 11, and then there are additional tales to be told. And they're not as good as the first 11. My opinion, but most people agree with me. However, this book was a strong debut, hailed by critics as a must-read. A simple woods guide uncovers destiny's call when a manipulative sorceress and sinister ruler threaten the balance of magic, and his new companion holds the fate of humanity in her hands. My wife read this recently, loved it. But the number one book, 1994, to not get any attention from the nominations for awards was Soul Music by Terry Pratchett again. This time, book 16 of the Discworld series, but this time it's a standalone story in the midst of all those Discworld books. Discworld is kind of its own unique creation, and each book doesn't necessarily flow to the next one after it. This book is regularly featured in Best of 90s fantasy lists. When rock and roll-infused magic descends on Ankh-Morpork, a shy young musician, Death's granddaughter, and a band of rockers find themselves caught in a wild, magical musical revolution. Interesting premise. For 1995, our runner-up is Villains by Necessity by Eve Forward. This is a high-adventure fantasy with a twist. and is a standalone novel. E. Forward, the author, you might recognize that last name. Her grandfather had a novel featured on the 1980s list. Writing was in the family. This particular book by Eve is a cult favorite, noted for its clever premise and wonky sense of humor. In a world saved too well by good, the last thief and the last assassin join forces with a villainous sorceress to restore balance, because without evil, the world itself is dying. But number one this year, and one of the biggest whiffs of the 90s when it comes to awards, is Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West by Gregory Maguire. This fantasy revisionist fairy tale is a standalone novel in that it tells a story that finishes. There are additional books that come out then in this series. Because this one was such a big hit, the author had to write more. This book was hugely popular, ranks highly on Best Fantasy of 1995, and forget about fantasy, Best Books of 1995 lists. Shocking that the awards didn't notice it at all. A reimagining of The Wizard of Oz, told from the perspective of Elphaba, exploring her rise as the witch who defied expectations in Oz. For 1996, our runner-up is Conan, Lord of the Black River, but by a different Conan author than we've mentioned before, Leonard Carpenter. This is sword and sorcery of the heroic fantasy style, and is part of the Conan series of novels in the Robert E. Howard Legacy series. This is a cult favorite. Solid ratings amongst Conan fans. In this book, Conan mounts a daring campaign to free Aquilonia by confronting supernatural conspiracies and tyrants along the Black River. But number one for 1996 comes to us from Down Under, a very popular book down there that got no whiffs from the International Fantasy Awards, Enchanter by Sarah Douglas. This is a fantasy novel that's part of the Axis trilogy. It's actually the middle book of the three. It's beloved in Australia and among international epic fantasy readers. It's praised for its rich storytelling and character depth. It's tragic. It didn't get any of the big awards. It did win the Aurealis Award, which is specifically an Australian prize. But again, no nominations beyond that. In this book, Axis and his companions journey to the fortress of the Icarii, confronting political intrigue, personal destiny, and the escalating threat of war. For 1997, our runner-up of the year is The Book of Night with Moon by Diane Duane. This is an urban, supernatural fantasy and is a standalone novel. It's a cult favorite, especially amongst cat lovers and urban fantasy readers. It frequently appears in 90s fantasy lists. A secret feline wizard patrols New York City at night, battling supernatural forces and protecting both human and cat realms in a story of hidden magic. Now, it kind of cracks me up that the runner-up featured cats, and the best book of the year is Dogland by Will Shetterly, an autobiographical, magical realism fantasy novel. I know that sounds confusing, but it works in the book, and it is a standalone. It's highly praised for blending fantastical elements with real-world depth. A man recounts his childhood growing up at Dogland, a roadside attraction in Florida, where the real and magical collide in profound and often unsettling ways. For 1998, the runner-up is Law of the Wolf Tower, Clyde Journal's Book 1. It was published as just Wolf Tower in the United States. The full name is the UK title, which came first. This is written by Tanith Lee and is young adult fantasy, a coming-of-age quest story. The Clyde Journals is a trilogy, so this introduces it, gets it going. It's recognized in popular reader polls as one of the best fantasy novels of 1998. Clyde, a sheltered young noblewoman, escapes her cloistered court and embarks on a journey across windswept seas, discovering hidden truths, danger, and the beginnings of her own power. But number one, the best book to get no nominations in 1998 was Marl Fox, the 11th book of Brian Jacquet's Redwall series. Did you know there were 22 books in this animal epic adventure fantasy series? I did not know there were that many. So this is like the halfway point. It routinely tops best fantasy books of 1998 lists. The peace of Redwall Abbey is shattered when the cunning and aristocratic Marlfox clan launches a daring raid, forcing the woodland defenders into a high-stakes battle of wits and courage. 1999, the final year of the 90s, starts with the runner-up being The Jackal of Nar by John Marco. This is an epic fantasy, a political drama, and a grand adventure scope. It's book one of the Tyrants and Kings trilogy, praised for its fast-paced narrative and intricate world-building. A cunning thief becomes entangled in royal conspiracies and rebellions as he navigates loyalties amid the violent dethronement of tyrant kings. But the best book of 1999 to get no award and sniffs at all is Servant of the Dragon by David Drake. That's rich if you caught it. This is military fantasy with historical echoes and is book 2 of the 5-book Lord of the Isles series. Strong follow-up to the popular kickoff novel of the epic fantasy series, this one is well rated by fans and recognized in many year-end best-of lists. A young lord builds an unlikely alliance with a dragon and leads his island people against dark forces and kingly intrigues. That's all I got. But I just gave you 20 books from the 90s that are all fantastic reads that might be right for you. Yet shockingly were missed. Not even a nomination from the Locus Award that hands them out like candy. But they were worthy. So you might want to check them out. If you already have experience with these books, I'd love to hear about it. Put your thoughts down in the comment box. Also look down in the show notes for other ways that you can interact with Zach and I. Our Discord server has an invite link there. A lot of you have been joining our Discord server recently, and we love having you there. We've also got social media links, our email, and a link to our Patreon page. Thank you to all of our Patreon supporters who each month donate just a little bit of their hard-earned cash to help us afford keeping this coming out to you. That's where I'll leave you for today. Watch for the 2000s coming soon. We'll talk to you next time.